This is The Sit Down, and I'm joined by actor and, can I just say it, icon Laverne Cox. You know her from Orange is the New Black, and she's also an Emmy-winning producer. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello. It's so good to see you.
Yes,
it's been a while.
Likewise, it has been a while. And you have been very busy. I mean, I know this week must be extremely busy, but I got to start by talking about this Taylor Swift video. How did you become a part of that? What was that conversation like?
Todrick Hall, who co-executive produced and choreographed the video, reached out to me through, I can't believe we had never met, but reached out to me through my friend Peppermint and said, Taylor's doing a video sort of celebrating the LGBTQ plus community, and would you be available to be a part of it? And I love Taylor, and I said this would be great. And then the issue is always schedule. Is there a way to fit something in? And the schedule worked out perfectly. And so I went, and I had not heard the song because if it needs to be very secretive. But I trusted Taylor. I trust Todrick, and I love this song now. I'm like singing. You need to calm down. It's the song of this, maybe the song of the summer. Well, people just need to calm down.
People need to calm down. I mean, there's been a lot of conversation about Taylor's own allyship. What have you made of the conversation around it?
I think for me, dialogue is great, and being critical is wonderful as long as it's with love and with empathy. And I think that I always encourage people to critically engage with media images because we should never be passive consumers. So I think if criticism is fine as long as it's loving and empathetic.
Well, thinking about what you brought up about criticizing being thoughtful, of course, this is such a historic Pride anniversary. It's the 50th anniversary of Stonewall. How has your relationship with Pride changed over the years?
Oh my God, it's so funny because before I transitioned, I kind of identified as gay. I was always very femme, but identified as gay. And I was so gung-ho. I remember being in college back in the day and just being gung-ho about Pride. And then I transitioned, and I felt like in a lot of LGBTQ circles, I was treated like a drag queen. It's sort of like this spectacle that I'm supposed to make people laugh all the time, and it didn't feel like it was really about me. And so I distanced myself from Pride for many, many years. And really over the past, 7-8 years or so, slowly trans people have been added to the conversation more around LGBTQ issues. And over the past several years, I felt very welcomed again in Pride for Pride as a trans woman of color. And I think that's beautiful since there were a lot of trans women of color who fought at the Stonewall Uprising in 1969.
Yeah, indeed. I've been thinking of the names Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Yes. As Major Griffith Gracie.
Absolutely. And, speaking of being welcomed into Pride, you are literally the face now welcoming people to New York City for World Pride. You're in a Smirnoff campaign that's playing around New York City airports. And I mean, there have been so many moments when you have become just such a symbol of visibility. What to you is still the significance of that visibility, and also what is the cost of that visibility?
Oh, wow. The significance really is sort of for other people to assess, but what I know is that over the years I've met trans people all over the world who have said that they decided not to commit suicide because they saw me on television, that they decided to transition or come out to friends and family, that they believe that they could have careers as actors and being openly trans. And so visibility has the potential to save lives. It's not enough. Our visibility needs to be reflected in our public policies. We know trans people are being attacked in multiple ways. We're banned from the military. They want to discriminate against us in homeless shelters and in healthcare. And there's a case going to the Supreme Court that'll be heard in October that will determine whether LGBTQ people are covered under Title VII, which bans discrimination on the basis of sex. So people need to become aware of that. So a lot of rights, and trans women are being murdered disproportionately still. This month alone, 5 Black trans women were murdered. So as we celebrate Pride, and there's so many things to celebrate, we also have to remember that there's so much work that needs to be done. And the legacy of Stonewall, we also must remember, was the patrons of Stonewall fought back against police-sanctioned discrimination against the LGBTQ community. So it was about fighting a system that was oppressive and discriminatory.
One of the things that you mentioned was the murders of Black trans women this month. Of course, it is an epidemic. How would you like to see people talking about this particular issue? Like, a lot of times we really talk about the kind of hyper-focus in the media on these kinds of tragedies. How would you like to see people talking about them?
For a long time, I was talking about this all the time, and then I just felt I was existing in this space of death constantly, and it was insanely depressing. And so I try to be in a both-and place, in the place of celebrating, India Moore being on the cover of Elle magazine or Janet Mock having this landmark deal at Netflix, but then also acknowledging that, like, and particularly for Black trans women, that their lives are being taken away from them simply for being who they are, or because of various intersectional issues. That what we know about violence against trans people is that it's people who have to do survival, to engage in street economies for survival, are more likely to experience violence. If you're homeless, if you don't have access to employment or healthcare, you're more likely to experience violence. So those systemic things have to be dealt with. And I think for the people who are attacking trans women, I think, like, what I say to men is that your attraction to me as a trans woman is not a reason to kill me. That the discussion around, because there's this whole sort of myth that trans women are out there tricking people and then they deserve to be murdered because they're, and that's not the case. There's been a market for trans women in the realms of dating and sex work for a very long time. We don't have to trick anyone. I'm recently single and I don't have to trick anybody. There's many options, and I'm very grateful for that. And so for men, your attraction to us is not a reason to kill us. And for people who are cisgender, who identify as female, have conversations with the men in your lives about trans people, and, like, so that we have to lift the stigma around attraction to trans people, and we have to lift the stigma around trans people existing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you just have me over here, like, nodding and nodding and nodding. One of the things you mentioned is you are recently single, and you actually just posted about this on Instagram. And in your post you wrote, we decided we should make a public statement since our relationship was public in ways neither of us anticipated. Why was it so important to you to post about this and just to be so public about your relationship?
So first of all, I never thought I would ever be public about anyone I'm dating. I had a boyfriend before Kyle, and, like, people barely knew about it. There was one news story, but we were kind of, I don't want to do red carpets with a boyfriend. I've never wanted my professional work to be related to any man, whether I'm more famous than him or not. I want my work to be about my work. But with Kyle, we unexpectedly fell in love and just started living our lives and taking selfies and then posting them
as you do on Instagram,
And it just kind of happened. I didn't tag him for a year, though. It was about a year and 3 months into our relationship before I tagged him. So there was just some mystery man on my Instagram. And so I started tagging him.
People guessing.
Well, I started taking him to events, and people were like, yeah, I've seen you on her Instagram. And I was like, okay, babe, I should probably tag you now. And it was a year. And then people started being really inspired by our relationship and how amazing that he is. He had never dated a trans woman before, and there were no issues that he had around, people people thinking he was gay. He thinks I'm not gay, but gay is awesome, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so he was just so secure with himself, and people needed to see that, because a lot of trans women are out there dating men who are not secure with themselves, who are attracted to them and have all this conflict. And so then it began to inspire a lot of people and give a lot of people hope. And so I wanted folks to know that the relationship hasn't worked out, that it's time for us to move on. But the love that we shared, it's kind of emotional. The love that we shared was incredible. And I never thought that I could love someone the way I loved him, and that someone could love me and fully see me and still love me. I really see all the messy Laverne, the trauma, the shame, all that stuff, and still, like, be there. And so I never thought that was possible. And so he's an amazing man. And and I think too that as we move on, I just wanted it to be clear. I think we lived this life that was for us, but then we shared it with people. And so I just wanted to just kind of get it out there and let people know.
Well, one of the things you said is that your work is so important to you, and I can't let you go without talking about Orange is the New Black.
Yes.
It launched the careers of so many actors, so many LGBTQ actors, especially in not only you, but Leah Delaria, who is also on AM to DM Today, Samira Wiley, and more. I could go on. Are there any behind-the-scenes moments that made the show so special that you're thinking about as it comes to an end?
Oh, my gosh. It's just really emotional, because when you've been on a show for 7 years, that people that you work with are family. Our hair and makeup team has been with us since the first season, and I love them so much. Our wardrobe folks, Jen and her whole team, and our crew members. So it's even, and of course the cast. I've met people who I will be friends with for the rest of my life. And so you miss people, and then we get work, and I moved to LA, and so you're working all the time, and so you don't get to see everyone. But the people that I met, are their biggest takeaway. And I am so insanely grateful to Netflix and Gingy Cohen specifically, because she, in 2012, when I booked this job, she and Jen Houston, our casting director, were committed to hiring a trans person to play this part, which was a big deal then. It's still a big deal now. Yeah. And that changed my life. I was ready to stop acting. I literally bought all my GRE materials. I was studying for grad school, and my manager calls me and he's like, "There's an audition." I was just like, "Oh, I'll go, but I'm going to go to grad school. I'm done with this acting thing." And then this job changed my life. I was able to pay my rent. and it affected the lives of people all over the world. I mean, my career has been really, really amazing over the past 7 years since we started Orange. So I'm so grateful. Thank you, Gingy. I love you.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit with me.
Of course. My pleasure.
And I'm going to go start celebrating Pride. More AM to DM is up next.